First, I want to thank Shawn McDermott for all the work he's done in Buffalo over the last 9 years. We all remember the playoff drought before Shawn got here. Shawn has definitely left the Buffalo Bills in a better place than when he arrived in 2017. He gave his heart and soul to trying to win a championship. I gave Shawn his first head coaching job, and I'm proud of that. I don't think he's done coaching in this league, and I wish him the best. I also want to thank him and his wife, Jamie, for the kind words and thoughts that they gave to me when Kim had her sudden cardiac arrest. And, it was really encouraging for all the kind thoughts that they gave our family while we were going through that ordeal. My decision to bring in a new coach was based on the results of our game in Denver. I want to take you in the locker room after that game. I looked around. First thing I noticed was our quarterback with his head down, crying. I looked at all the other players. I looked at their faces and our coaches. I walked over to Josh. He didn't even acknowledge I was there. First thing I said to him, I said, "That was a catch." We all know what I'm talking about. He didn't acknowledge me. He just sat there sobbing. He was listless. He had given everything he had to try to win that game. And looking around, so did all the other players on the team. I saw the pain in Josh's face at his presser, and I felt his pain. I know we can do better, and I know we will get better. I want to express my confidence in the guy sitting next to me, Brandon Beane, and the job he has done in resurrecting this franchise. I'm not going to sit here and defend everything that we have done as a franchise, but the bottom line is we have attracted good people here. Brandon has brought in Joe Shane, who's now the GM in New York, Dan Morgan, the GM in Carolina, Dennis Hickey, former GM in Miami, and our own Brian Gain, who's still here with us, former GM in Houston. There have been some very talented people that Brandon is associated with that he's brought through the front door here at One Bills Drive. I'm aware there's criticism out there about our franchise. Does anyone know what the numbers 523, 2226 represent? I'm asking a question. No? That's our seeding over the last 7 years in the playoffs. 5, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 6. An organization doesn't carry that kind of record without being a great organization and without having great players. It's impossible to have that kind of results without having a good roster. I hear it from my counterparts at league meetings. A lot of them talk about the Bills organization and the success we've had through the years. Our roster is a direct reflection of the hard work that Brandon and our scouting staff has done through the years. One may complain over a deal, over a player, over a result, but the bottom line is success over a long period of time means we're doing something right. We are focused on bringing a Super Bowl to Buffalo. We have an MVP quarterback in Josh Allen. I'm looking forward to having a successful coaching search. I know this is a desirable job. Our phones are ringing, and we're going to begin that process. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon.
Thanks, Terry. I want to first off echo how Terry started this, thanking Shawn and his family. Even before arriving here in Buffalo in 2017, Shawn and I started our journey together, him as the D coordinator, me working my way up to assistant GM in Carolina. So that connection and that relationship, I know, factored into us building 9 years, 9 seasons here, and a lot of accomplishments together, things that we always worked on, things to get better, but we always did it together. And I'll always appreciate the years. And, you know, you think about the things that you could have done better, but I'll also try to remember all the great times that we've had. And obviously this is the start of a new chapter, but Shawn's a heck of a football coach, and we'll always root for him and his family. I want to thank our players, our coaches, our support staff. You know, I wish we were, as I've said a lot, I wish we were preparing for an AFC Championship game instead of up here right now. We know how close we were again. We just didn't get it done in Denver. But it wasn't for the lack of effort. And I told the team on Sunday that I'll remember this group as a resilient bunch. And I said resiliency is the one word the 2025 Bills will kind of always, as I look back on my tenure here. So I want to thank them all. We have a lot of work to do this offseason, like we do every year. We'll have decisions, and I know you guys will have roster questions or particular player questions. We'll answer those the best we can, you know, about the salary cap and things like that. And listen, I understand the frustrations out there. No one puts more pressure on me than myself. You know, the term pressure is a privilege is spot on. And this job is a privilege. Working in this organization is a privilege, and I don't take it lightly. We have, as Terry alluded to, an MVP quarterback who just completed his 8th season here. And we have got to help him get to the Super Bowl and bring a championship to Buffalo. And part of the reason we're here stinks because we have to discuss, you know, what happened this week moving on from a head coach. I bear guilt, blame, responsibility. There's no finger pointing. I understand there's things I could have done better. And we're always looking to get better, and that'll never change. If we don't win the Super Bowl next season and I'm up here explaining where we are and what we have to do, there will be more things that we will work to get better. The goal here is to bring a championship to Buffalo. We've been close, as Terry said, 7 straight years in the postseason. I think he listed all the seeds. We have to get it over the top, and that starts with finding the right head coach. And we're starting that process as soon as today with interviews. So with that said, I'll turn it over to questions for Terry or myself.
Hey, Terry, you mentioned that you thought it was a catch, and you told Josh it was a catch. Why would you fire a coach based on a bad officiating decision?
I did not fire a coach based on a bad officiating decision.
Maybe I misread
If
you.
I can take you, if I can take you into that locker room, I felt like we hit the proverbial playoff wall, year after year. 13 seconds, missed field goals, the catch. So I, I just sensed in that locker room, like, where do we go from here with what we have? And that was the basis for my decision.
Terry,
Brandon, there's a
given
report out
the
there, there's a
fact
report
that-
out there that there was a meeting 5 weeks ago, and Shawn expressed dissatisfaction with the roster. The report is that that was part of what has led to this today. You're not being happy with his assessment. Either one of you gentlemen could answer that if that was.
I don't know where that came from, but we bet all the time, you know, I talk to Shawn every day. Yeah, we talk about being dissatisfied with this, being happy with that, and whatnot, but we communicated all the time, and I don't know where that came from.
Terry, given the fact that Brandon was promoted, and congrats on that, and Shawn was fired, both played a role in the success and failure of this franchise. What came down to one over the other, or was it that easy?
Like I just said, I believe it was, where does the leadership of the team on the field and in the locker room, where we go from that moment, which, you know, another playoff failure, and that's why I decided that Shawn had to leave.
Terry, how far before the playoff game had you maybe started thinking about this being a possibility?
After the playoff game, in the locker room.
So it wasn't a thought at all?
I need to keep saying that. I keep saying it. It was feeling the moment, being there, being there.
Sorry, Terry. What process did you go through to evaluate whether it was, coaching versus talent on the roster? Over time, how did you evaluate it? What process did you go through?
Well, you see teams in the league, I'm not going to mention team names, but they have a great year, a good year, and the next year, the success doesn't continue. Like I say, you don't get in the playoffs 7 straight years in this National Football League where there are very few blowouts and dozens and dozens of close games every year. You don't get there without having talent and a great organization, and Brandon and his staff have brought in regularly players that, I mean, look at the injuries we had this year. We're down guys on the practice squad contributing in big games. You don't do that without talent in the front office getting you there.
Terry, a big chunk of the fan base very frustrated with you specifically, dating back to that interview that you did on WGR 550. Thought it was very condescending, and I think that a lot of people come out frustrated with you, in particular that you're still here and Shawn isn't. I think a lot of it leads back to that. Do you regret that, and do you think in hindsight, maybe not only the host but the fan base is kind of right about that assumption about the position?
It's a long, probably, answer for you, Matt. Listen, I'm a passionate person. I don't think that's new on anybody. And do I regret that? Probably the biggest regret is I probably put pressure on the wide receiver group when I reacted in that way because I felt like they were being picked on unfairly. And if you remember, not trying to rehash what happened, but I was going, man, we had, the number 2 scoring offense, and we were just, we had some tweaks there. It wasn't the exact same group, but it was a similar group that we thought, an addition here or there. Even when I did that interview, I knew we were adding Elijah Moore later that day. And so it was probably more of a reaction to, we just had a draft of defensive guys that we thought could help this team get over the top, and it was more in the defense of that group. Do I regret how it's turned out? Sure. It was not meant to be condescending. It was me having a little bit of too much passion, I guess, if you want to say, hey, I shouldn't have done that. At the end of the day, it wasn't. I had nothing against those hosts. I think I did another interview with those guys. I've done them before. I did it at training camp when the next opportunity was. So it wasn't anything personal or anything like that. It was just more coming to the defense of our players, because I felt like they were being picked on and they couldn't defend themselves at that point.
Brandon, to further that though, the wide receiver position has been an issue with this team, and a lot of people out there believe you have failed in the free agent market, and then obviously with the Keon Coleman signing, which hasn't worked out. How do you answer the fact that you have not given Josh a good enough wide receiver thus far?
Yeah, I mean,
Can I interrupt? I'll address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff, who felt strongly about the player. And, he's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it, but I'm here to tell you the true story.
Brandon, can you
Can you finish that
elaborate
answer,
on
Brandon, on the receiver room?
yeah. At the end of the day, Sal, it's some of it is the evolution of how you build your roster. If you look back to, let's go to the 2020, 2021, those before we paid Josh, okay, we made the move for Stephon Diggs, obviously paid him, Cole Beasley, John Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, drafted Gabe Davis. We were in a lot of 10 personnel. The game changes, it evolves. Some things don't change, but some things do. And so the league at that time was, and what our coaches asked for back when Brian Dable was here, was to spread things out, okay? We want to spread these guys out and get mismatches. Well, then defenses started saying, okay, we're going to get smaller and more athletic, so we're going to bring things in. You've seen the last couple of years, we've been in with more tight ends on the field, running the ball more. So there's just different iterations of how you score points. And you have to, when you're paying Josh what you're paying him now versus what you were paying him in 2020, 2021, 2022, you got to make some sacrifices. And where we pick, we're not picking at the top, okay? When you say free agency, like, I'm not sure what players that we could have acquired, that I've got to be able to afford them, okay? So you're making selections. The number one thing I always want to do with Josh Allen is protect him, okay? We've had an O-line that's gotten better and better that also helped us have a leading rusher this year. And so we want to be two-dimensional. We want to be balanced. If you look at some of the things offensively, numbers-wise, how we rank, I think a year ago we were 2. This year maybe we dropped 1.5 points. We were 4th. I want number 1 receivers everywhere. I do. But I also want to make sure, there's teams out there with number 1 receivers that haven't made it as far as we do, maybe because their O-line's not as good, maybe because they made concessions on defense or other areas. You got to kind of make some concessions. But I promise you, we're looking. And to the point, I think it came up at the trade deadline when I came in here. We talked about some of the players that we tried to acquire. We're always trying to acquire them. Can I do better? Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Brandon, at the trade deadline, you said that you felt the team had a championship roster. What, in your mind, led to the group falling short of that?
I mean, Jay.
A bad call.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, I would say we went to Jacksonville and we won, a good team. And then we went to Denver, who was the 1 seed, and we obviously had turnovers in the game, but I would say we had every chance to win that game. And as I said earlier, not be playing here. So we didn't get it done, but it doesn't mean that we didn't have the opportunity or have a team that could have gotten it done.
Terry,
You've emphasized how important Josh is to this franchise and how seeing him after the game was a factor. What input did he add, if any, on this decision to hire Shawn, or what conversations have you had with Josh Allen?
He didn't have any input at all. I didn't talk to Josh about this. I talked to him afterwards, and that conversation will stay private, but he had no input in it.
The idea of everybody being in lockstep, which was a big part of bringing in your coach and your general manager at the same time, how did that dissolve? The idea of everybody being on the same page, everybody having the same vision.
I don't think it dissolved, Tim.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, like, when you say it dissolved, what do you, like, are you saying an instance, or like, what do you mean?
Just over time, how maybe saw things differently. You know, you say you have different needs or different thoughts on drafting or direction of the team, or why the general manager gets a promotion when the head coach gets fired despite having the same record. There's obviously a disconnect between those two things.
Well, I would say when we acquired players, and this isn't changing going forward, Tim, whether it's a draft or free agency, the personnel department, we're not just saying, hey, we're taking this player, hey, we're signing this player. We share in those conversations. Now, sometimes a decision's got to be made, and sometimes I don't always sign the player that I think is the best, and sometimes I do. And maybe the coach doesn't. You have to make a decision. But the thing I would applaud what Shawn and I have had here, this has been 9 seasons, not something like 2 or 3. This has been 9 seasons that we did a lot of good things and brought in a lot of good players and a lot of good coaches and won a ton of football games. I think we've won 60-some% of our games, which is, which says there's been success. What Terry, has said was the proverbial playoff wall. So I don't think that's anything dissolved. I think that was the decision he made. We were still communicating through last draft, through last offseason. It was a heavy defensive draft. And Shawn was very involved, and his coaches in the selections that we were making and getting the guys on the field and develop them. So I don't think it got to a point where we were signing or drafting players, out of alignment.
If I can clarify
Tim,
too, 'cause
Tim, you can't, I wouldn't use the word dissolve. We all debate and argue with each other in any organization. We're talking about a football team here. Everybody has their input, and not everyone agrees on everything you do inside that organization. That doesn't mean relationships dissolve. It's just, to me, it's healthy. You foster debate. I disagree with you. Like, this guy's told me to F off a couple times, trust me. And I strongly disagreed with some pretty good players that he's drafted. I'm not mentioning names. But it doesn't dissolve the relationship. It's just the way we operate.
Terry, what is the new structure of, you're now the president of football operations and the general manager. What was it like before as far as who reports to whom when you hire a new head coach? How that will work going forward?
Yeah, we have a group of us that are going to work together to hire the head coach. It'll be Terry, myself, Pete, Brian Gain, Terrence Gray, both of our assistant GMs, and Laura Pegula, and Josh will have some involvement as well.
Brandon or Terry, when you make a coaching decision, I think there might be a sentiment that they must have somebody in mind. That is why they are moving on. I understand you are going through a search, but is there a front runner? Is there somebody you are targeting, or is this completely an open search, no decisions made yet?
It's 100% an open search. We're still sorting through the names. We're vetting names. Matt, I think Derek was telling me before we came down, some of the guys were leaked out that are coming in, but the list is not final, and there's still 4 teams playing too that could have some candidates. By the rule, we can't interview any of those until their seasons are complete. But yeah, it's an open process. There is no front runner, old, young, former coach, first-time coach. We're opening every door. We got to find the right guy for this team to help get us over the hump.
Terry, when you look at the coaching situation, you said they've hit a wall. But with Shawn, you guys have been in that position each year, close. Is it a risk to make a change now? And isn't there going to be high pressure on the next coach coming in because you have been this close to this point?
There is definitely risk. We've got to make the best decision. So that's a fact. And what was the rest?
Pressure on the new coach coming in because you've already established where you have been for 7 straight years.
I can tell you this, there's desire. I don't know about pressure right now, but there's a lot of people that want to look at taking this job. There's a lot of interest.
Is it Super Bowl or bust? Because in
No.
2026.
No. We can't say that to somebody coming in. We're making a change, and, it's do your best job.
Hey, Brandon, how would you categorize your relationships specifically throughout the season this year with Shawn? And I ask you that because the perception from the fan base out there is that this was some kind of power play made by you. And still be here in Shawn got.
Yeah. As Terry said, there's disagreements all throughout, way before this year. It's not like we were 100% always in agreement on every decision that he made or I made. That just comes with the territory, and I wouldn't expect that with the next head coach. There's certain things that fall in his area, whether it's managing a game, how we schemed a game, whatever it is that are his, and then there's certain decisions that personnel related, somebody's got to make the final call. What was the saying about?
Can I help him a little?
There's a perception from the fan base.
Can I help you about the power play part of that? I'm the kind of guy, if I sense you're on a power play, you're out. I don't like power play people. We have an organization we work together, but any sense at all that he was on a power play, he would have been gone.
And
Because that's not my kind of person.
And Joe, that's hurtful to even hear that or say that. I worked 19 seasons starting as an intern in Carolina and worked my way up. I came here and I've never tried to do that. I would love for anyone who's making that accusation to walk in these doors and ask any person, player, coach, trainer, anyone. People can disagree with draft picks that I make or people I sign or I screwed up the wide receivers, whatever it is. Those are harmful things that, I walk in the door and my wife's got tears coming down her face for stuff like that. And I'm going to damn try hard to win a Super Bowl here. I am. But for somebody to question my character like that, it is BS. And I've never done that. If you'll remember, in 2023, there was an article written on Shawn accusing things. Who stood up in front of every one of you guys and defended him and his family and everything he's done here? And then we went to Kansas City and we won that game. And I went down to Jeff Missouri and said, give me a game ball. I'm going to show everyone that this team has his back. I've done nothing but have everyone's back. And so for someone to question my character, my integrity, that's where I draw the line.
Terry, why did you find it important to speak out today? You've not been to a lot of you've been to a lot of press conferences, but not taking questions. Why did you feel it important today to answer questions and to show, what behind the scenes, what you felt was an important decision here?
Well, a long duration of why I wasn't in front of the media was Kim's health situation. Very traumatic. But I felt that, this is a big move. Shawn McDermott is well respected. He's a great coach. And I just, this is important for people to hear what I have to say. But don't take my lack of appearance. It was all personal.
Brandon, can you talk about when someone is relieved of their duties, obviously there's some sort of disconnection. Where do you feel that strain lie, and how does that affect the locker room culture going forward?
Well, it doesn't mean there's a disconnect. We're graded on success, failures in these jobs, all of us. And Terry made that decision, the proverbial, as he explained, wall. It had nothing to do with disconnect or discord, anything like that. He felt that this team needed a different voice after what he witnessed and was a part of in the locker room after the Denver game.
Terry, you mentioned the conversation with Josh after the fact, after your decision. I understand your desire to keep that private, but is the starting quarterback on board with this decision?
The starting quarterback will be part of the team to help select a new coach. He's going to be working with us. And anything else, his feelings, I want to keep that private. I don't want this in Josh's head. This was my decision. And I know I didn't answer your question, but I did, I hope, in a roundabout way. It's, his personal opinion, I keep personal.
Did either of you get a chance to address players before this news broke, and what is the general assessment of how you feel the roster feels about this decision?
What was it? Did you say, did we get to?
Did either of you have a chance to address players before the news broke?
No, we had an exit team meeting like we do every season the day after, so that was Sunday. Terry's decision came on Monday, or that's when we were informed of his decision. So the players had already left.
So they first found out possibly
through the media. Yeah.
Rick, can you walk us through the decision to claim Darius Slay, the fallout from that? Obviously, it was a roster move that impacted your depth, and it was talked about quite a bit ever since.
Yeah, I mean, we're always, Shawn and I always talked about areas of concern where we're deeper as the season goes along. You obviously face injuries, and at that point in the season, Dorian Strong was out. Maxwell had come back, but we're still kind of working him in there. And you're going, all right, if Trey or CB or one of those guys goes down, the next guy is Jamarcus. We think Darius Slay, with his history, his pedigree, would be a good guy. We're trending towards the playoffs here. And so we talked about it. And Shawn and his coaches watched him. We talked about, the pros and cons to doing it. And we ultimately decided to do it. And I always remind the coaches, you have, hey, hopefully we can get Jamarcus back on practice squad, which we had hoped that we could. But anytime you release a player, you have to assume one of 31 can claim him. Now, when we claimed Darius Slay, we had no idea that he had the intent to only play for one team. And when the way the rules work, listen, I would have loved when I found that out to push him back and say, all right, we're unaware of that. Give us Jamarcus back so that we don't lose both. But that's not the way the rules work. And so Houston put a claim in, and we decided once we learned about what Darius' situation was to bring in Darnell Savage, who was released a couple days later, and we ended up needing safety depth. So, Jamarcus, we love him and didn't want him to go, but he had also been inactive for a number of games. You're just trying to constantly, incrementally look for pieces on your roster. A very weird thing that happened, but that was not done rogue, let's just say.
Terry, going all the way back to Terry's comment about Keon Coleman, it sounded like maybe that was a pick that you were talked into, if you will. Going forward, there's going to be a new relationship with the head coach. Is there going to be a little more autonomy when it comes to drafting on your part?
Josh, I believe in collaboration. I do. And I want to find in our personnel staff, it's not just me, we want to understand. So when we get a new head coach in here and, we'll talk about schemes and is anything changing on offense, defense, how that'll work. And we'll then look at the roster together and see, did some of these players work better in this scheme or that scheme? But to answer your question, I think the best, healthiest way to find players is that we're as close to lockstep as you can, not me only signing or taking players that the coaches think work or only what the personnel guys think. It's consensus building, and I've been around that a number of years and have seen it successful. But a decision has to be made, and at the end of the day, I still own the decision, right or wrong, of Keon Coleman. Keon has been here 2 years. He's a young guy. I still believe in him, okay? There are other decisions that have been made that maybe coaches weren't as high on. You're never always going to be, we always see the player as coaches or personnel. Even personnel guys, sometimes I'm arguing with a scout or vice versa, and they convince me that they have it in the right order, and I don't. And I think if you asked our college scouts or our pro scouts, we get into, as Terry said, we get into some healthy, heated debates. He sits in a good number of our draft meetings, in some in February, but all of them in April. And that's how you make the best decisions. But we're not going to bat 1,000. We know that. And each one that we miss, believe me, I beat myself up on and look back and trace. It's how did we come to the consensus of this player? What was the risk? Did we think this would happen, whether it was something on the field or off the field? But the short answer, Josh, is we're going to collaborate. We're going to work together and try to find the best players that work for how this new coach wants to do things.
Will that new coach report to you directly, and how will that operate?
It'll be very similar. At the end of the day, we're going to work together. It's a marriage, the same as Shawn and I. And like I said, you have to make a decision at some point if, and sometimes it'll go and I'll lean to their way, and sometimes I'll be like, my gut tells me I want to stick with how I see it. But we'll work together. It's nothing's really going to change from that standpoint.
Terry, earlier you mentioned that you felt that the injuries and how far down the depth chart was an indictment on the roster, getting guys into there. But why wasn't the sustained success also an indictment on Shawn's coaching to be able to continue to win football games as they're going farther down the depth chart with players?
Can you just repeat the tail end of that again?
You said it was a reflection of the roster that they had to play so many guys deep down the depth chart because of injuries, but they kept winning football games. So why was that also not a positive reflection on Shawn McDermott's coaching?
Again, I go back to 5-2-3, 2-2-2-6. Great roster, good coaching, no Super Bowl appearance. And I can't emphasize, if I can put you all in that room at that moment, after the game, it's like, how do we overcome this? You know, it's been one year after another. And that, it was the sense of, how do we overcome this? And I just couldn't see us doing that with Shawn.
Brandon, why?
That's why I relieved him. It's not an easy decision, trust me, with that success, but what is success? Is success being in the playoffs 7 years in a row with no Super Bowl appearance?
Terry, with
Yeah.
Brandon and Shawn's success and failures both so intertwined and together, how were you able to distill that Brandon deserves this promotion while Shawn is fired?
That was my decision. I could be wrong,
How much?
but it was success with the players. I think we've, I don't know if anybody knows it in this room, but Josh Allen wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this guy pushing and pushing, you know, and pulling a Houdini in that draft to get to the position where we could pick him. So, you know, that was my decision.
Mr. P, how much does the responsibility for coaching versus roster construction, clash when they don't reach that expectation?
Say that again?
How much responsibility goes into coaching versus roster construction when making that decision? When expectations fall short, how much does it go there? How much responsibility goes into coaching versus roster construction?
That's a hard question to answer. I don't know the answer to that. I really, no, go ahead.
You've received $850 million in taxpayer money for the new stadium. You have a new stadium that is sold out in PSLs. Going back to John's question earlier, you have not been accessible to the media and by way of that to the fans in several years. Do you plan on being more accessible in that regard for both of your franchises moving forward?
I think that's a possibility in the future. I can't even go watch my daughter play tennis. She's got to number 3 in the world, and I've been to like 2 of her matches in the last 4 years. We have issues in the family, but I can see me being more available in the future, yeah.
Brandon, to clarify, will the new head coach be reporting to you?
Yes.
And then with your new role, would you look at hiring someone to have the GM role and you take on more of the football ops role from a bigger perspective, or are you planning on keeping both roles?
No, I'll be the GM. It's not, it's a very similar, you're gonna see, we're gonna operate very similar that we've been doing.
Brandon, how do you move forward? How do you move forward with Keon Coleman at this point? You know, already the headlines and the shows are, he wasn't your pick. That's what's being said now.
No, he was my pick. I made the pick. Terry's point was that we might have had it in a different order of personnel versus coaching, and I went that way. But ultimately, I'm not turning a pick for a player that I don't think we can succeed with. So don't misunderstand that. Keon Coleman is a young player that has been here 2 years, has 2 years left on his deal. It's up to us to continue to work with him and develop him. It's not, his issues have not been on the field. They've just been maturity things that he owns. I give him credit. He owns. He doesn't make excuses, which I appreciate. And, you know, the crazy thing is, at this time last year, we kind of went through where he was trending up. He had the injury. We were a little disappointed in how he came back. He busted his tail, had a great offseason. You guys were at training camp. He had an excellent camp, no matter who he went against, made a bunch of plays. The Ravens game, obviously, ends up with 100 and whatever yards. And you're right, man, this kid's going to take off. But some of the maturity stuff got in the way, and you can naturally lose confidence in teammates or coaches, and that's understandable. It's up to us, and he and I had this conversation, and I'm sure he did with his coaches as well on the way out, of, all right, you got to hit the reset again and attack this offseason the way you did, attack training camp the way you did, and don't let these maturity issues get in the way of your playing time and your production on this team. And so that's where we're at with Keon Coleman. But we still believe in Keon Coleman here, and it's up to us to develop his talent so that he can help us win games.
Brandon, this isn't about the.
Let me talk about this issue. There's not one player on our team that somebody else could have been drafted in their place because of others' opinions. So we listen to the coaches, the GM has an opinion, some of our scouts, I have my opinions. But I don't think you can look at one player, even Josh, where somebody thought we could have drafted so-and-so here. So what I was trying to show with Keon was we collaborate. There's different names available at every draft pick that we could have selected.
Brandon, I know you mentioned the character stuff when you were talking to Joe specifically, but there is a section of the fan base that will say the wrong guy was fired, and that would be an indictment more on the roster than on the coaching. What would you say about the roster and the people that think this roster is not good enough, and that's why this team has fallen short?
Matt, like, I believe in our players, okay? Is there things that I can do better? Yes. We're always looking to improve our roster. Back to the Darius Slay thing. It's a 12-month process, okay? I'm always going to defend our players, okay? I'm not going to sit up here. It's up to Terry to decide who's the head coach, who's the GM of the Buffalo Sabres, the Buffalo Bills. You'd have to ask him on the decision he made. That's not me. I think the point that he was making was we've made the playoffs 7 straight years. We've won at least one playoff game in 6 straight years, a couple AFC championships. We're not like one of those teams where you get to the playoffs. Like when 2017 we made the playoffs, where our talent was then and what we were doing, we were excited to make the playoffs, hoping to win a game. I would say that's not been the case. 2020, we got hot that year and we're rolling. We kind of were just playing through. But I would say starting in 21, we really like, all right, we can achieve a championship if we do the right things. Things fall in place. We've put ourselves in position each year. A lot of division titles. We didn't win it this year. But we were right there with the number 1 team again this year. We can sit here and defend it all day and go back and forth for hours, this or that. At the end of the day, I believe in our group, and it's up to us this offseason to make the right changes, the right tweaks after we get this head coach and see if we can get this thing over the top. Any issues we have, put it on my shoulders. I own it all.
Where's Josh's health right now? After everything, is there anything notable that Josh has to have done? Where's his health right now?
He could have to have something done to his foot potentially here soon, but it would not impact like OTA stuff. He would if he does.
What do you think this team could have done better this year to get to a Super Bowl?
I mean, we were right there. We just didn't win the game. We were right there.
With all the free agents that you have, the age on the roster too, the guys that you brought back that did a nice job for you, but let's face it, their age. Would you consider this, if it were New England that's gone now too, is this in any way a rebuild? Not a rebuild that you tear it down, but a sizable rebuild, where this roster is gonna turn over maybe more than it has been in the last couple of years?
Good question. I think some of that is obviously some of it's going to be dictated by salary cap and guys are free agents, so they'll have opportunities to see what their value is and what we can afford within the cap. We'll still have to get under the cap before time. So we'll have to get those moves made, but part of the roster will be when we get this coach, like, does any style change? Like, just for example, do we hire a defensive guy that wants to run a 3-4? Well, that could change some personnel things. Do we want to do something different on offense? So all of those decisions will weigh in on, we've run more of a gap scheme type run system. Does someone want more of a zone scheme, more of an athletic, lighter lineman? I'm not saying we're leaning in it, but those are conversations that we'll have with these candidates, and once one's selected, that'll be the next thing, is diving in with him and his staff and assessing the current players and the current free agents and deciding who fits best.
Brandon, to those points that you just made, I think there was like maybe a lingering what if during Shawn's tenure as to like, okay, what if you paired an offensive-minded head coach with Josh rather than, risk losing them like you did with Abel back in 22. So is that a major consideration in this coaching search because this coach would effectively be the guy that takes Josh Allen through the duration of his prime here? Would that be maybe a lean for what you're trying to look for in head coach?
We'll definitely give those guys every chance, but we got to be careful not to just – this is a bigger job than just a play caller and a schemer. I think we've seen where guys have been excellent play callers, but they got to the head coach seat and they couldn't handle the adversity, the conflict management, all the things that – it's a CEO job. It really is. A lot of your time as a head coach or GM get taken away from me scouting, watching players, or a coach in there scheming X's and O's. So we got to make sure we get the leadership, the CEO part. So not far enough down the road. I mean, we haven't even started to know that, but I get your question.
Terry, you mentioned that you made this decision based on what happened in Denver and your feelings from being in the locker room. Had you won that game, would Shawn be the coach in 2026, or would you have made this decision if you lost in the AFC Championship or lost in the Super Bowl?
I don't want to speculate on that. It is what it is. I don't want to speculate.
I'm sorry, there were a number of players who expressed some displeasure at Shawn McDermott being fired. Well, how surprised were you by that reaction?
Everybody has their opinion. We can all speak our mind. I don't look at this stuff, so I don't even know who those players are. Trust me, I don't look at of what everybody's saying out there.
Brandon,
I made the decision, and it is my decision.
Brandon,
To
will it be?
clarify that timeline, you said you made the decision after the Denver game, that's very clear.
Mhm.
But with the news coming out Monday morning, the 36 hours in between, how much were you going back and forth on this decision, or what was that timeline like for you?
I didn't go back on it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.